Good morning and welcome to the 2007 Macgrove Project financial results presentation for the year ended 30 June 2021. I'm joined today by Scott Norval, National Manager of Macadamias, and Sandra Walton, Senior Funds Administrator. Shortly, I'll hand over to Scott to provide an overview of the industry dynamics over the past year, as well as a description of the Macgrove Project 2021 growing season and harvest. After this, Sandra will outline the FY21 financial results and distribution details. I'll conclude today's presentation and facilitate any questions from growers. Please note, the easiest way to submit a question is to type it into the questions dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can do that at any time throughout today's presentation. I'll now hand over to Scott.
Good morning, everybody. We'll start with a quick review of an industry update. The Australian crop forecast has recently been revised down to 52,000 tonnes of nut in shell. This is a modest 3.3% increase on last season's production. Sales levels have grown globally and are recovering well from last year's downturn due to the pandemic. On a global level, COVID shutdowns have impacted the market. Shipping delays have also impacted payments. Retail and snack sales have remained strong, but ingredient sales globally suffered during lockdowns. Ingredient sales are, however, now recovering strongly on the back of new product development, lower prices, and a reopening of many outlets. We'll now have a look at the Morpart MP07 harvest overview. Flowering commenced in October 2020. Hot, dry northerly winds experienced mid-flowering were not ideal, but despite this, the nut set did appear to be reasonable post-flowering. The 2021 harvest commenced in March this year and was completed in September. Throughout the maturation period, temperatures were above average and rainfall was well below average. Supplementary irrigation was heavily used in response to the seasonal conditions. Despite our best efforts and having ample water available, the 2021 crop yield was negatively impacted by the hot and dry conditions. Nut size, kernel recovery and quality were, however, at or above average levels for the project. Flowering for the 2022 crop is all but complete, and early indications see one of our best sets to date on the project's orchards. If we have a look at yield and price, the 2021 project yield of 783 tonne of nut in shell converts to 3.34 tonnes of nut in shell per hectare, or 1.25 tonnes of kernel per hectare. This is down approximately 11% from last year's 1.4 tonne of kernel per hectare. Although supplementary irrigation provided some mitigation to the conditions, crop yield was, however, impacted. Quality was good, with sound kernel recovery of 37.4%, up 2% on last season, and reject kernel was down to 1.7% from 2% last season. The effects of COVID and the stronger Australian dollar have seen our farm gate price fall from $6.68 per kilo last year to $5.85 per kilo this season. We now have a look at some optical yield monitoring that we've been using this year. We've been trialling new, more accurate ways of crop forecasting. This is important not only from a business planning perspective, but also to allow tailoring of nutrition programs to maintain optimum tree vigour for cropping in the following year. Optical cameras mounted on a buggy and a LiDAR unit record every tree in the orchard, and artificial intelligence then counts the nuts. We're presently comparing actual yield to the software predictions to work on calibration numbers by cultivar to fine-tune the outputs for next season's crop. Our aim is to have an accurate forecast by late February, early March, so that we can make informed nutrition decisions for the next season's crop. I'll now hand over to Sandra to go through the financial results.
Thanks, Scott. Good morning, growers and advisors. As Scott mentioned, I will be taking you through the FY21 financial results and distribution details. Firstly, cash flow and harvest timeline. As you may recall from previous presentations, the macadamia harvest overlaps 2 financial years, and therefore proceeds in any given financial year are received from 2 harvests. The slide on the screen shows the FY21 distribution is comprised of harvest proceeds received between July and January from the 2020 harvest and March and June for the 2021 harvest. This resulted in 61% of proceeds of the 2020 crop and 33% of the proceeds of the 2021 crop. Due to the timing of receipt of harvest proceeds, the FY21 distribution comprises of a combined total of 94%. As a comparison, last year, 107% of the crop proceeds were received in the one period. Now to the results. Growers in the 2007 Macgrove Project will receive a return of $983 per Macgrove. This amount is lower than last year, as outlined by Scott, due to a lower yield combined with a fall in the 2021 macadamia price. The crop proceeds received in FY21, added with other income, provides total income of $9,465 per Macgrove. Expenses for the period totaled $7,482 per Macgrove. This is comprised of operating expenses and rent of $6,560 and fees and cost recovery of $920. This equates to an FY21 result of $1,983 per Macgrove. To provide adequate working capital to fund macadamia orchard operating expenses throughout the year, each year the project retains a prepayment for expenses. By way of example, last financial year, a prepayment of $500 per Macgrove was sufficient for working capital requirements. Because lower revenue will be received by the project from the 2021 crop over the coming months, a higher prepayment is necessary. For this reason, $1,500 per Macgrove has been retained for the FY22 operating expenses. This amount is similar to prepayments in prior years of the project. As in previous years, the return is made from 2 components. A cash distribution of $132, which is paid directly into your bank account, and refundable GST of $851, which is claimable from the ATO. It is worthwhile reminding growers of the importance of registering for GST, as this forms a meaningful part of your return. The fund pays GST on your behalf. However, the fund itself is unable to claim this amount back. The underlying holder of the Macgrove must do this. RFM is not a licensed tax agent, and therefore we encourage growers to seek their own professional advice. Growers can expect their FY21 statements will be issued and payments will be made today. It is also worth noting that RFM are exploring options of transferring the registry to an external provider. This would bring the registry services in line with other funds managed by RFM and benefits the growers by online access, including receiving communications electronically, among other things. More information will be communicated in FY22 should this proceed. I will now hand you back to James to take you through the conclusion and questions.
Thank you, Sandra. In conclusion, whilst the sector has experienced some price volatility around the COVID-19 pandemic, the industry demand for Australian macadamia kernel sales are showing strong improvement as outlined by Scott Norville. Furthermore, the fundamentals for this commodity, RFM believes, are very sound, with high levels of consumption growth historically and still very low levels of global production when compared to other tree nut types. The 2021 yield, although lower due to challenging growing conditions, did see an increase in sound kernel recovery and a decrease in reject kernel. And I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank Scott and his team for their hard work during the past year. As described by Sandra, the FY21 return is $983 per Macgrove. This is inclusive of the GST refundable amount. The cash component of this return will be paid today, and payment statements will also be posted to our growers today. This concludes the presentation component of today's webinar, and we'll now take questions from attendees. You can ask a question to the panel by typing a question into the questions dialog box. You should be able to see that on the right-hand side of your screen. While we wait for questions to come through, by way of reminder, as always, please do not hesitate to contact Investor Services should you have any questions regarding your investment throughout the year. We'll now just pause for a moment while we allow some time for the people on the line to type any question they may have into the question box to be received by us shortly. If you could please bear with us. Thank you for bearing with us. We've just got a few questions that have come through today. The first one is in regards to the registry services and potentially impacting cost to the project. We've historically run an in-house program which has resulted in costs being charged to the project, and we're factoring in any cost differences alongside with additional benefits for growers as part of that decision-making process. So as Sandra mentioned, we'll be communicating that throughout the course of the year, should that proceed. There's also another question which has come through just in regards to an increase in rent. I'll hand over to Scott shortly to provide any comments that he can in regards to that. However, I can also, with the notice of this question, come back to that individual grower to provide them more detail. But Scott, do you have any initial comments in regards to that question?
I don't, James. There was no change to the rental agreements, and I'm not particularly familiar with the indexation that's on that. It would be linked to Brisbane CPI, but we'll probably have to come back with some detail to the participants. Understood.
We'll just allow a few more moments for any further questions to come through, should there be any. Well, it looks like there are no further questions from the participants today. So once again, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us. And in summary, distribution payments will be made today, and payment statements will be posted today. And as always, if you have any questions on your investment, please don't hesitate to contact our Investor Services team, and they'll be more than happy to assist you with any queries that you may have. So thank you and good morning.